how's it going? It's Jen here. So when it comes to the topic of style, I've noticed that there are certain words that get thrown around a lot, but they don't actually mean what they're supposed to mean. So they're sort of these illusions that are actually just marketing buzzwords a lot of the times that encourage more consumption at the end of the day and that help justify what we're buying into. And honestly, I fall for these illusions all the time. So today I want to talk about the 5 illusions about style that cloud our judgment when it comes to style and shopping. And also I want to talk about which words we can potentially use to replace these illusory terms so that we can bring more clarity to our style instead of confusion. The first illusory term I want to talk about is the word effortless. And this is my personal favorite because I've always been that person that said, I want to look like I just woke up like this. And I even created a video talking about effortless style in the past. We all know that nothing truly lacks effort. If you find someone's look to appear effortless, it most definitely means that effort is being expended elsewhere, whether it's skincare or hairstyling or good nutrition and sleep, nails, lashes, spot treatments, whatever. Now, when it comes to clothes, when we're talking about effortless style, it's often associated with things like loose and flowy silhouettes, and probably something that leans a little bit more towards the casual side. And definitely nothing that is too structured or formal or dramatic, because the whole point is for the overall look to say, I'm not trying that hard. And I started thinking about why it is that we find it so important to not look like we're trying so hard. And the answer is probably a lot more complex and layered than what we can discuss in a single video here. But the ultimate conclusion that I reached was, why should anyone care if I am trying hard? Like, if the common goal is looking good and feeling good, then what is so wrong with trying hard to accomplish that goal? There was also the whole trend last year around high maintenance things I do to stay low maintenance, and at least people were being honest about the amount of effort that goes in to look good. But a lot of people have already called out this trend as bullshit and a scam, because at the end of the day, it's just another way to normalize spending more money on beauty routines. And hey, if affordability is not an issue for you, then that's great. I'm happy for you. And not all of these so-called high maintenance tips require a ton of money, but a lot of them do. And it sort of creates this unnecessary pressure, especially for younger people, to consider all of these high maintenance steps or routines as a requirement rather than a luxury. And I can definitely see how that can be problematic down the road. So then, if not the word effortless, then which word can we use to replace that term? And I thought about it a bit, and I'm not sure if there is that perfect word that can encapsulate everything that the word effortless does. But one of the terms that I came up with was natural. I feel like it sort of gives a similar vibe in the sense that I still want to look like myself, but just a little bit more polished and put together. And also without looking like I'm very done up, I also thought that the word relaxed could be a good alternative, not only because of the loose and flowy silhouettes I talked about earlier, but I also feel like being relaxed means that you're more at ease with not creating as strong of an impression as a very flamboyant style. And whether it's with the word natural or relaxed, I think that neither of these words create as strong of an illusion that there is a lack of effort. But I can also see how both of these words can easily become controversial if you start thinking about their antonyms. So what I think is more important is just recognizing that there is a negative stigma around the idea of putting in a lot of effort and trying hard to look good and looking the part. But let's be real, everybody wants to look good at the end of the day. Like, nobody wants to look like shit on purpose. And there's nothing wrong with putting in effort to do that. The second illusory term I want to talk about is the word timeless. And this is definitely a marketing buzzword that helps justify high price tag items. If you think about these so-called timeless pieces, they're usually pretty basic, modest, they're good quality, but it comes at an expense. And apart from its quality, there's nothing much that stands out about the piece, but we try to convince ourselves that the price is justified by saying that it's timeless and that I'll be able to wear it forever. But rarely are these items actually something you'll keep forever, let alone a very long time. because most of us are influenced by trends, whether we like to admit that to ourselves or not. That's the scary thing about trends. And the whole idea of timelessness has become a trend in itself. All of these businesses that promote timeless fashion, if they were truly selling timeless pieces, like items you only have to buy once in your lifetime, a lot of them will probably go under pretty fast. I also think it's interesting how the timing of all of these timeless style icons emerging is very well aligned with the trends. Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, for example, yes, she's always been a style icon, but we can't deny the fact that her style just gained a lot more popularity in the mainstream just in time for the comeback of the 90s minimalist trend. So what we're really seeing is these trends making their way around and back, and that's not timeless, that's nostalgic. And nostalgia only proves the cyclical nature of fashion and style, not its timelessness. Also, timeless style is always labeled in hindsight and by somebody else. If you think about Jane Birkin's style from the 60s, even Jane Birkin herself said that she finds her style from that period unrelatable, which goes to prove that style is not truly timeless. So I think a good word to replace the term timeless is simple or classic, because that's what all timeless style really is. These are simple enough pieces that you can wear in many different ways, and in that sense, they can sort of be considered your own classics that support your style and its evolution. And related to the idea of timelessness, the next illusion I want to talk about is the investment piece. And I say that it's related to the term timeless because of the high price tag, and they're usually considered as items that you'll be keeping for a long time. And I'm not denying the fact that a good quality garment can last you a lifetime if you take good care of it, but if it doesn't remain perfect for you for a long time, then you're gonna stop wearing it and you'll get rid of it eventually. And it's really difficult for a garment to stay perfect throughout time because change is inevitable, especially as we age. Our bodies are going to go through changes. We fluctuate in size and shape. We start to look very different. Even our taste and preferences might change over time. But none of these are really factors that we consider much in depth when we're trying to convince ourselves that it's an investment. What I actually think impacts our decision more so than these changes we go through is the pressure to avoid fast fashion as we age, whether it's because they're cheap looking, or we feel like we're too old to wear them, or we might start paying more attention to the sustainability aspects of brands, etc. So naturally, we start looking for better quality, which often leads to higher price tags. And the illusion of the item being an investment justifies our desire for better quality garments. But the thing is, you don't actually need any excuses or reasons to justify why you want better quality things. Like if you want it, then you want it. End of story. There's no need to explain why. But the reason why you feel the need to convince yourself is likely because the price is out of the budget to begin with. Like if you're comfortable with the price, then why is there a need to convince yourself that it's worth it? And on top of that, trends like quiet luxury or aesthetic minimalism have got us chasing these if you know type of brands. And at the end of the day, this is just another status flex, and brands are taking advantage of your desire to elevate the appearance of your social class. So instead of the phrase investment piece, I think we should just call it a luxury item. Just call it what it is. If you feel the need to convince yourself that money is well spent by calling it an investment, then it's likely not a necessity, which makes it a luxury. And wanting luxury is not a sin in itself, but it is financially irresponsible to spend money on luxuries you can't afford and calling it a good investment. Now, since we're on the topic of finances, the next illusion I want to talk about is sort of on the opposite side of the spectrum from the investment piece, which is the item being a good deal. So this is something that I have a lot of experience personally. So throughout high school and university, most of my friends were international students. So these were kids with wealthy parents back at home who can cover their finances entirely and quite comfortably as well. So essentially these kids had unlimited funds. Like if you run out of money, then you just ask for more. And I was definitely not in the same situation. And I'd be lying if I said that this didn't cause a lot of insecurities for me. But I also think that I learned a ton about money and how I should manage my relationship with money, because I've seen firsthand how more money doesn't really make your problems disappear. And if anything, it just fosters more irresponsibility and hinders the growth of young adults to an extent. So I've grown to become very proud of how much smarter and more responsible I am with my money. But on the downside, it got me hooked on chasing a good deal. And because I've always been very interested in fashion and style, bargain hunting through things like end of season sales or thrifting or secondhand purchases became very habitual. And I didn't realize that I was fostering my own overconsumption habit because my purchases were masked by the illusion of a good deal. Especially with thrifting, there was just a lot less guilt for me around shopping because I'm not buying brand new fast fashion items. So it put me on this weird moral high ground, and it took me a while to learn that even $5 spent is considered wasted if it's spent on the wrong item. But because I was chasing the high of a good deal, it led to me buying a bunch of things that I don't actually like, and it often came at the expense of quality because, let's be real, a lot of markdowns happen for a reason. So instead of the phrase a good deal, I think we can use the word affordable to replace that. Again, just call it what it is without the sugarcoating. Because affordable doesn't always mean it's a good choice. It just means it's within the budget. And just because something is within the budget, it doesn't make it worthwhile. So it sort of shifts the mindset from I must have it because it's X% off to should I buy it just because it's a good price? And I think that simple shift from a statement to a question just allows us to think about the other aspects of the garment other than the price, and it just allows us to be a little more picky. Now, speaking of being picky, the next illusion I want to talk about is versatility. Maybe this isn't so much an illusion, but it's definitely something that affects my shopping habits, which I've actually talked about in my last video about the 90-day style challenge that I put myself through. And in that video, I talked about how I noticed that I have a lot of what you would call meh items that you can kind of pair with a lot of different outfits, but I don't actually love these pieces. And I think that I ended up with so many of these items in my closet because I was so focused on finding those basic items that provide a lot of versatility. So naturally, I was settling for that good enough feeling, but rarely did these items actually feel great in reality. It's similar to the idea of a good deal in the sense that because the price is right, everything else can be compromised with a good deal. And with versatility, because the item is basic enough and it goes with a lot of outfits, everything else can also be compromised. But in reality, because I don't love these items very much, I naturally just don't reach for them that often, which makes the item less versatile at the end of the day anyways, because they just don't get much wear. So instead of the word versatility, I think we can replace that with the word basic. Because calling an item versatile gives it a very positive feeling, whereas calling it basic feels a bit more neutral and maybe even slightly negative. Basic is already kind of associated with versatility, but you can't ever call an item too versatile, whereas you can kind of call it too basic. So you can't really be critical by asking, is it too versatile? Because there's no such thing. But you can be critical by asking, is it too basic? And that could naturally lead to more critical questions like, do I even like it? Or do I have something similar already? Or can I find something that is a little bit more interesting? So I think not having such a positive frame of mind by using the word versatile can just help you be a little more objective with your purchasing decisions. So those are all of the 5 illusions I wanted to talk about. But there's one bonus illusory idea that I also want to bring up, which is that your personal style must display something unique about yourself. I am all for being unique and showing off your individuality with your style, but I feel like these days having a personal style has become such a trend in itself, that there's this weird pressure created to not copy any outfits from Pinterest, or you have to be more unique with your style. And I think this also relates to the idea of staying offline, becoming the new status symbol. And in the end, this is just another way to say I'm better than everyone else because I'm not chronically online. But some of us are also perfectly happy with following trends and having a similar style as other people. I mean, living in Vancouver, I see this all the time with the array of Pacific Northwest brands and uniforms, and I'm definitely not an exception to this either. I saw this comment on one of the videos that said, I'm perfectly happy getting by as an NPC. And I think it's necessary to acknowledge that not everybody has the same level of interest in fashion or personal style, and there's really no need to feel pressure about having the most unique style. Everyone has a finite amount of energy, and how you prioritize spending that is completely up to you, and there is no need for any kind of judgment or pressure. Let me know in the comments if there were any words that you could come up with on your own to replace these illusory terms. I'd love to know your thoughts. I hope you liked the video, and I'll see you in my next one. Until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.